The grand halls of the Zevithar imperial palace gleamed under the golden light of the twin suns. The walls, carved from a rare crystal-like stone, shimmered with shifting colors, reflecting the power and legacy of the Zevithar dominion, one of the most feared empires in the galaxy. At the center of the throne room, on a raised platform, sat Emperor Vortin and Empress Solara, rulers of 1,000 worlds. Their presence alone commanded fear and respect. They were tall, with deep violet skin, glowing silver eyes, and strong, angular features. Every movement they made was graceful yet filled with authority. Before them, standing with unwavering determination, was Princess Catalvera, the heir to the throne. Unlike her parents, her expression was not one of authority, but of quiet resolve. Her long, dark tendrils, the Zevithar equivalent of hair, swayed slightly as she took a deep breath. Her parents waited for her to speak. The court nobles stood in a semicircle around the throne, their curiosity growing. The princess had requested an audience, but she had refused to say why. Finally, she spoke. "I have news," she said firmly, "and it is something that will change the fate of the Zevithar dominion forever." The emperor leaned forward, his glowing eyes narrowing. "Then speak, daughter." Zalvera's heart pounded. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind countless times, but nothing could prepare her for the reality of it. She steeled herself. There was no turning back now. "I am pregnant," she declared. A wave of silence crashed over the throne room. The nobles exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from confusion to shock. The empress's lips parted slightly, a rare sign of surprise. But it was the emperor who broke the silence. His voice was deep, carrying the weight of command. "This is unexpected." His gaze softened for a moment. "But it is good news. The next heir to the throne will be born. Who is the father?" Zalvera took a slow breath. This was the moment. She lifted her chin and answered, "His name is Jake Carter. He is human, from Earth." The air grew heavy. A noble at the far end of the room let out a quiet gasp. Another clenched their fists. Murmurs spread like wildfire. "A human," someone whispered in disbelief. "The primitive species from the Sol system. Impossible." The emperor's expression turned to stone. His glowing eyes darkened, his fingers curling into fists. "Tell me," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "Is this some kind of joke?" Zalvera did not flinch. "No, it is the truth. I love him, and our child will be of both Zevithar and human blood." The silence was shattered by the emperor's furious roar. "You have shamed our lineage." His voice thundered through the hall. "You are the heir to the greatest empire in the galaxy, and you choose a human. A weak, short-lived creature. One whose species has no empire, no real power." Zalvera's jaw tightened. "You underestimate them." The empress finally spoke, her voice calm but cold. "Daughter, why? Why choose him when you could have had a noble warrior? A leader from a strong race?" Zalvera met her mother's gaze. "Because he is not weak. Because he is unlike anyone I have ever known. He is not bound by tradition or fear. He faces danger with courage. He finds solutions in impossible situations, and he treats me not as a princess, but as an equal." Her voice softened. "And because he loves me, not for my title, not for my power, but for who I am." The emperor rose from his throne, his powerful frame towering over her. "This is unacceptable," he growled. "Your child, our bloodline, cannot be tainted with human weakness." Zalvera's tendrils tensed, a sign of frustration. "Then test him." The court fell silent again. The emperor's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" "Test him," Zalvera repeated. "Summon him here. Let him face whatever trials you demand. If he fails, then I will accept your judgment. But if he proves himself, then you must accept him." The nobles murmured. This was unprecedented. No outsider had ever been given the chance to prove their worth in the ways of the Zevithar. The emperor's expression darkened. Do you truly believe a human can survive our tests? Zalvera's eyes burned with defiance. I know he can. For a long moment, the Emperor stared at his daughter. Then, at last, he let out a slow exhale. Very well. His voice was cold as steel. Send the summons to Earth. This human, Jake Carter, will face the trials of worth. If he fails, he dies. If he succeeds, we will decide his fate. Zalvera felt a shiver run down her spine. She had bought Jake a chance, but could he survive it? On a small blue planet called Earth, thousands of light years away, Jake Carter was about to receive an invitation that would change his life forever. Jake Carter had faced many challenges in his life, from barely scraping through college to surviving a near-impossible expedition in the Amazon. He had always believed that if he kept his head down and worked hard, he could get through anything. But nothing could have prepared him for the glowing portal that appeared in his tiny apartment. One moment, he was sitting on his couch, munching on a leftover pizza slice. The next, his entire living room was bathed in a swirling gold and violet light. A deep humming sound filled the air as an impossibly tall armored figure stepped through the portal. Its body was encased in dark silver plating, its glowing blue eyes locked onto him. Human, you have been summoned, the figure announced in a voice that was both metallic and commanding. Jake blinked, slowly setting down his pizza. Excuse me. The armored figure took a step forward, the floor vibrating beneath its weight. You are Jake Carter. You will come with us. The Emperor of the Zevithar Dominion demands your presence. Jake let out a nervous laugh. Look, buddy, I think you've got the wrong guy. I don't even know what a Zevithar Dominion is. The figure's head tilted slightly. You are the mate of Princess Zalvera. Jake's stomach dropped. Oh, so it wasn't a prank. It wasn't a dream. He had always known that dating an alien princess would come with complications, but he had imagined things like cultural misunderstandings, long-distance communication, or, at worst, overprotective alien bodyguards. Not a royal summons. Jake ran a hand through his messy brown hair. Okay, so what happens if I refuse? The Zevithar warrior's glowing eyes flashed. Refusal is not an option. The Emperor has decreed that you will face the trials of worth. If you succeed, you may stand beside the princess. If you fail, you will perish. Jake gulped. That last part did not sound fun. He exhaled slowly. And if I just run out the door right now? The warrior stepped aside, revealing the wall behind him had turned into a swirling void of stars. Beyond it, Jake could see a massive spaceship, its dark hull shining like polished obsidian. We have already secured the area, the warrior said. There is nowhere to run. Jake sighed, rubbing his temples. Great, guess I don't have much of a choice, huh? The warrior remained silent, which was answer enough. All right, fine, Jake muttered. Let's get this over with. A journey to the stars. Moments later, Jake found himself floating weightlessly inside a Zevithar transport ship. The ship's interior was sleek and smooth, with glowing symbols etched into the walls. The seats were designed for creatures much taller than humans, and Jake had to awkwardly adjust himself to fit. Through the large viewing window, he saw Earth shrinking behind him. The realization hit him like a truck. He was leaving his planet. For the first time, he truly understood what he had gotten himself into. Zalvera, he muttered under his breath. You'd better be worth all this trouble. Arrival at Zevithar Prime. After what felt like hours, the transport ship entered orbit around Zevithar Prime. Jake stared in awe. The planet below was a breathtaking mix of golden landscapes, glowing blue oceans, and enormous floating cities. The capital, Vorthalis, stretched across an entire continent, its towers made of crystal and metal, pulsing with light. The ship descended smoothly into the Imperial Palace docking bay. As the doors opened, Jake was met with an imposing sight. A full battalion of Zevithar warriors stood in perfect formation, their dark silver armor gleaming under the light. At the center of the grand hall, on an elevated throne, sat the emperor and empress. Their eyes glowed with power, their expressions unreadable. And in front of them, standing tall and proud, was Azalvera. She looked just as beautiful as he remembered, her deep violet skin glowing under the palace lights, her silver eyes filled with a mix of relief and determination. Jake exhaled, relaxing for the first time. At least he wasn't alone in this. Then the emperor spoke. "Human, you have been brought here to prove yourself." Jake straightened his back. "Yeah, I got that part. And what exactly do I have to do?" The emperor's eyes burned with challenge. "You will face the trials of worth, ancient tests designed to measure your strength, intelligence, and resilience. No outsider has ever attempted them before." Jake smirked, crossing his arms. "Well, I've always liked a good challenge." The nobles in the court murmured in disbelief. A human, standing before the emperor without fear. Impossible. The emperor's lips curled into a dangerous smile. "Then let the trials begin." Jake Carter had been in some tough spots before, getting lost in the Amazon rainforest, nearly failing college, and once getting locked inside a convenience store freezer for 3 hours. But standing in the grand arena of Vorthalis, surrounded by thousands of hostile alien spectators, he realized something. This might be the worst one yet. The arena stretched wide, its walls made of glowing obsidian, towering over the battlefield like an ancient monument of judgment. Above him, Zevithar nobles and warriors watched from their seats, their silver eyes gleaming with anticipation. In the royal balcony, Emperor Vorton sat with an expression of cold amusement. Beside him, Zalvera watched with tense shoulders, her eyes never leaving Jake. A deep voice boomed through the arena. "The trials of worth shall begin." The crowd roared in excitement. Jake took a deep breath. "All right, buddy. Time to prove these aliens wrong." Trial 1. The combat test. The first trial was simple. Survive. Jake was thrown into the arena with a Zevithar warrior twice his size. The creature's dark silver armor gleamed under the twin suns, and its 4 muscular arms flexed as it gripped a massive energy blade. The announcer's voice rang out. "Jake Carter, a fragile human from Earth, will face Tarvek, champion of the Imperial Guard. A single strike from Tarvek's blade will reduce him to dust." Jake gulped. Great. No pressure. The massive warrior lunged. Jake barely dodged, rolling to the side as the energy blade sliced through the ground, leaving a glowing molten scar. The crowd laughed. "Pathetic," someone muttered. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead. He couldn't win by strength alone. He needed a plan. Then he noticed something. The Zevithar warrior was slow. Strong, yes, but slow. Jake smirked. Let's see how he handles a little human creativity. He sprinted around his opponent, dodging every heavy swing of the energy blade. The warrior grew frustrated, swinging harder, faster, but also sloppier. Then Jake saw his chance. When the warrior raised his blade high for a final strike, Jake dove forward and grabbed a handful of arena dust. With a swift motion, he threw it directly into the warrior's glowing eyes. The massive Zevithar roared in pain, stumbling backward, blinded. The crowd gasped. Before the warrior could recover, Jake leaped onto his back, wrapped an arm around his thick neck, and applied pressure. A sleeper hold. The warrior thrashed, trying to shake him off. But Jake held on for dear life. His opponent's movements grew weaker, slower, until, with a final grunt, he collapsed. Silence. Then, an explosion of gasps and murmurs. A human had defeated a Zevithar warrior. Jake stood up, wiping dust from his hands. He looked at the Emperor and gave a casual shrug. Next, Trial 2. The intelligence test. The second trial took place in a massive circular room lined with holographic panels. The task: solve a battle simulation. Jake had to command a fleet of Zevithar warships against a simulated enemy. The nobles whispered, "This is where he fails." Jake cracked his knuckles. "All right, time to use those hundreds of hours playing strategy games." The enemy fleet outnumbered him 10-1. But Jake noticed something. The AI followed predictable patterns. So he did what humans did best. He broke the rules. Instead of attacking head-on, he split his fleet into small, unpredictable groups. He baited the enemy into ambushes. He sacrificed decoy ships to force bad positioning. And then, in one final move, he sent a fake surrender message. The AI, programmed to follow traditional honor rules, hesitated. That was all Jake needed. He launched a full surprise attack. In minutes, the enemy fleet was destroyed. The Zevithar nobles stood in stunned silence. Even the emperor's glowing eyes flickered with something close to respect. Vizalvera, she was grinning. Trial 3. The Purity Test. The final test was ancient. A genetic scan to determine if Jake's DNA was worthy of mixing with Zevithar blood. Jake stood in a dark chamber as a machine scanned every inch of his body. The priests in long golden robes whispered prayers, waiting for the results. Then the machine beeped, and the results shocked everyone. "Impossible," one priest muttered. Jake raised an eyebrow. "Huh, is that a good impossible or a bad impossible?" The head priest turned to the emperor, his voice shaking. "His DNA is unstable, adaptive. It does not follow a single pattern. It is constantly shifting, evolving." Murmurs spread through the chamber. The emperor narrowed his eyes. "Explain." The priest hesitated, then spoke the words that changed everything. Asterisk, asterisk, his kind. Humans are not weak. They are unpredictable. Their bodies, their minds, they evolve faster than any species we have ever encountered. The chamber fell into silence. The emperor's gaze returned to Jake, and for the first time, he saw not a primitive, not an outsider, but something far more dangerous. The emperor's decision. The trials were over. Jake had not only survived, he had won. The emperor stood, his expression unreadable. Then he spoke. "Jake Carter, you have proven yourself in battle. You have shown intelligence beyond expectation, and your very existence defies the limits of understanding." He paused. "You are worthy." The crowd gasped. Exalvera's eyes sparkled with pride. Jake smirked. Well, that wasn't so hard. But deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. Because some of the Zevithar nobles did not look pleased. And in the shadows, danger lurked. The grand arena of Vorthalis still echoed with the gasps and murmurs of the Zevithar nobles. Jake Carter had done the impossible. He had passed the trials of worth. He stood in the center of the arena, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and pride. Above him, the emperor watched with an unreadable expression, while beside him, Princess Talvera looked ready to rush down and embrace him. But not everyone was pleased. Jake could feel the tension in the air, the way some of the nobles whispered and glared. To them, he wasn't just an outsider. He was a threat. The emperor finally spoke, his voice calm yet powerful. "Jake Carter of Earth, you have completed the trials. You have proven your strength, intelligence, and potential. You are now officially recognized as a suitor to my daughter, Princess Calvera." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Jake let out a small sigh of relief. Step 1. Complete. Then the emperor's eyes darkened. "But," he continued, "there are those who do not accept this outcome. There are those who would rather see you fall." Jake felt a chill crawl up his spine. Before he could respond, a sudden explosion rocked the arena. An assassin's strike. A black-cloaked figure dropped from the stands, landing just a few feet away from Jake. The assassin's energy daggers hummed with deadly power, their violet glow casting eerie shadows on the ground. The crowd screamed in shock, guards rushing forward. But the assassin moved first. Jake barely dodged as the figure lunged at him. The dagger sliced through his jacket, missing his skin by mere inches. Oh, great. Another fight. Just what I needed. The assassin moved fast, too fast. Their attacks came in rapid succession, forcing Jake to duck, roll, and barely stay alive. He had no weapon, no armor, and worst of all, no plan. Xalvera's voice rang out from above. "Guards, protect him." But the assassin didn't give them a chance. With a flick of their wrist, they threw a small orb to the ground. A blinding flash erupted, stunning everyone around them. Jake's vision blurred. He couldn't see. And then, he felt cold metal against his throat. The assassin whispered, their voice full of disgust. "You do not belong here, human." Jake's mind raced. If he didn't act now, he was dead. So he did the one thing no Zevithar would expect. He bit the assassin's wrist. The figure gasped in pain, their grip loosening just enough for Jake to slam his elbow into their stomach. The assassin stumbled back. Jake didn't hesitate. He grabbed a nearby piece of broken arena stone and threw it. It smashed into the assassin's mask, cracking it open. The figure hissed in pain and stumbled back, just as the guards finally regained their sight. One of them lunged forward, impaling the assassin with a spear. The figure gasped, then collapsed to the ground. Silence filled the arena. Jake exhaled heavily, his hands still shaking. That was too close. Enemies in the shadows. The Emperor stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Take the body," he ordered. "Find out who sent them." The guards obeyed, lifting the fallen assassin and carrying them away. Jake turned to Xalvera, who was already rushing toward him. She grabbed his arms, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt?" she asked, her silver eyes full of worry. Jake gave a weak chuckle. "Nothing I haven't survived before." The Emperor watched them for a moment before speaking again. "This proves what I feared," he said gravely. "There are those within my court who want you dead." Jake nodded slowly. "Yeah, I kinda figured that out when someone tried to stab me." The Emperor ignored the sarcasm. "You have passed the trials, but your real challenge begins now. The Zevithar nobility will not accept a human so easily. You will need to navigate their politics, their alliances, and their betrayals." Jake groaned. "Great, I hate politics." The Emperor's eyes hardened. "If you fail at this," he said, "you will not just lose your chance with my daughter. You will lose your life." Jake swallowed. No pressure, ha. A dangerous proposition. Later that night, Jake sat in a lavish guest chamber within the imperial palace. He could still hear the murmurs of nobles outside, still feel the weight of their judgment. Xalvera sat beside him, her gaze serious. "You need allies," she said firmly. "You can't survive alone." Jake sighed. "And where exactly do I find these allies? Last time I checked, everyone here hates me." Xalvera smirked. "Not everyone." Before Jake could ask what she meant, a knock came at the door. A tall Zevithar noblewoman entered. She had emerald green skin, sharp golden eyes, and an air of quiet authority. Unlike the others, she wasn't looking at Jake with disdain. She was curious. "I am Lady Veshera," she said smoothly, "and I believe we have a common enemy." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Oh." Lady Veshera sat across from him, her golden eyes glinting. "Certain nobles want you dead, human," she said. "And if you fall, Princess Xalvera's influence will weaken. My enemies are your enemies." Jake frowned. "And what do you want from me?" Lady Veshera smiled. "A partnership. You want to survive. You need someone who knows how this court works." Jake exchanged a glance with Xalvera. This was dangerous. Trusting the wrong person could get him killed. But what choice did he have? He extended his hand. "All right," he said. "Let's make a deal. The game begins." As Lady Veshera shook his hand, Jake knew one thing for certain. Winning the trials had been easy. But surviving the Zevithar court, that was going to be the real battle. Jake Carter sat in the grand halls of the Zevithar Imperial Palace, his mind racing with possibilities. Across from him sat Lady Veshera, her golden eyes calm and calculating. She had just offered him an alliance, but something about her smile made Jake uneasy. Princess Salvera stood beside him, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "You say we have a common enemy," Jake said slowly, choosing his words carefully. "Who exactly are we talking about?" Lady Veshera leaned forward, her emerald green skin shimmering under the palace lights. "High Lord Craven," she said in a whisper. Zalvera tensed at the name. Jake frowned. Never heard of him. Lady Veshera smirked. "Oh, you will." She tapped her fingers on the table. "Craven is one of the most powerful nobles in the Empire. He controls the military elite, and he despises the idea of a human in our court. If anyone ordered that assassination attempt on you, it was him." Jake exhaled slowly. "Great, just what I needed. Another guy who wants me dead. Why tell me this?" he asked. "What's in it for you?" Lady Veshera chuckled softly. "Craven and I have history. He seeks to weaken the princess's influence, and by extension, mine. If you survive, Exalvera remains strong. If she remains strong, so do I." Jake narrowed his eyes. "So you're helping me to help yourself." Veshera's smile widened. "You're learning quickly, human." Jake exchanged a glance with Exalvera. He didn't fully trust Veshera, but if she was telling the truth, then Craven was a dangerous enemy. And if Jake wanted to survive, he needed to strike first. A dangerous invitation. 2 days later, a summons arrived at Jake's chamber. It was from High Lord Craven. The message was brief. "Join me for dinner. Let us speak as civilized beings." Declining would be unwise. Jake sighed. "Well, that doesn't sound like a trap at all." Vizalvera frowned. "You can't go. It's too dangerous." Jake smirked. "You know, people keep trying to kill me anyway. I might as well meet the guy who's putting in the most effort." Lady Veshera, standing in the corner, chuckled. "You are either very brave or very foolish." Jake shrugged. "Can't it be both?" The dinner with an enemy. The dinner took place in a private chamber overlooking the imperial city. The long table was covered in exotic Zevithar dishes, most of which looked extremely unappetizing to Jake. Across from him sat High Lord Craven. He was tall, his silver eyes sharp with intelligence. His dark crimson robes gave him an aura of power, and the way the guards stood behind him showed his influence. "Welcome, human," Craven said smoothly. "I must admit, I am surprised you accepted my invitation." Jake leaned back in his chair. "I figured if someone's trying to kill me, I should at least meet them face to face." Craven chuckled, but his smile was cold. "I do not wish to kill you, Jake Carter," he said, "but I do wish for you to leave. The Zevithar Empire has no place for a human." Jake picked up a strange-looking fruit, inspecting it. "Funny. The Emperor disagrees." Craven's expression hardened. "The Emperor is blinded by his daughter's foolish emotions. She sees something in you, but I do not. You are weak. Your kind is weak." Jake smirked. "I don't know, buddy. I passed your trials of worth. Not bad for a weak species." Craven's gaze darkened. "Strength is not just about surviving battles. It is about understanding power. And right now, you have none." Jake took a bite of the fruit, immediately regretting it as the bitter taste burned his tongue. But he kept his expression neutral. "Then maybe I should get some," Jake said casually. Craven raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. You do not flee like a coward. You wish to play the game." Jake leaned forward, his eyes locked onto Craven's. "I don't have a choice. You're making the rules, and I'm just trying to stay alive." Craven smirked. "Then let me offer you a deal." Jake's stomach tightened. "Here we go." A tempting offer. Craven gestured to a golden vial placed on the table. "This," he said, "is a rare toxin. Tasteless. Undetectable. 1 drop. and the Emperor will be dead within the hour. Jake's blood turned to ice. Kravum's silver eyes gleamed. If you truly want to be powerful, prove it. Remove the Emperor, and I will ensure you have a place in this empire. Silence filled the room. Jake glanced at the vial, then back at Craven. He could feel the weight of the noble's test. This wasn't just a deal. It was a trap. Jake let out a slow breath. Then, with a deliberate motion, he picked up the vial and threw it out the window. It shattered against the stone far below. Craven's eyes flashed with surprise, then amusement. "You are bold," he said. Jake leaned back. "Yeah, and I'm not stupid either. I know this was a test. If I said yes, you'd know I was willing to betray anyone. And if I'm willing to betray the Emperor, then I could betray you too." Craven stared at him for a long moment. Then, to Jake's surprise, he laughed. "Perhaps you are not as foolish as I thought," Craven admitted. He stood. "This game is far from over, human. But for now, consider yourself still alive." Jake exhaled as Craven left the chamber. Zalvera was waiting for him outside, her face tense. "What happened in there?" Jake ran a hand through his hair. "Well, good news, I'm still breathing." Her expression softened. "And the bad news?" Jake sighed. "I just made an enemy out of the most powerful noble in the empire." Jake Carter sat on the balcony of the Zevithar Imperial Palace, staring at the endless city lights below. His mind was heavy with thoughts. He had just refused High Lord Craven's offer to betray the Emperor. Now he had gained a powerful enemy. Princess Zalvera stepped beside him. "You made the right choice," she said softly. Jake sighed. "Yeah, but now I've got a target on my back. Craven won't just let this go." Zalvera nodded. "He will strike soon. We need to be ready." Before Jake could respond, a messenger drone flew in and dropped a small holodisc on the table. It flickered to life, displaying Lady Vishera's face. "I have urgent news," her voice echoed. "Meet me in the Grand Library." "Come alone." Jake and Zalvera exchanged a look. "This could be a trap," she warned. Jake smirked. "Everything here is a trap." The Grand Library meeting. The Grand Library was massive, with towering shelves of ancient Zevithar knowledge. It was nearly empty at this hour, making every step Jake took echo in the silence. Lady Vishera stood near a reading table, her golden eyes sharp. "You're late," she said. Jake shrugged. "Traffic." Vishera ignored the joke and handed him a data tablet. "This is information on Craven's secret forces. He's moving his personal guards into the city. He's preparing for something." Jake's stomach tightened. "An attack." Vishera nodded. "A coup." Jake felt a chill crawl down his spine. "You're serious?" Vishera's voice was cold. "He's planning to overthrow the Emperor. And when he does, you and Zalvera will be the first to die." Jake clenched his fists. He should have known Craven wouldn't wait. He looked at Vishera. "Why are you telling me this?" She smirked. "Because I hate Craven." A plan of action. Jake returned to Zalvera's chambers, explaining everything. She paced the room, deep in thought. "If Craven moves, my father will be caught off guard. We need to act first." Jake nodded. "We need proof. Something to show the Emperor before Craven makes his move." Zalvera tapped her fingers against her desk. "Craven's guards must have a command center. If we can find it, we'll find the evidence." Jake grinned. "Sounds like a fun little break-in mission." Zalvera smiled. "Then let's get started." Infiltrating the command center. Later that night, Jake and Zalvera moved through the lower city, cloaked in the shadows of the towering buildings. Vishera had provided coordinates, a hidden base deep within the old industrial district. As they approached, Jake spotted Craven's elite guards patrolling the entrance. "We can't fight them all," he whispered. Zalvera smirked. "Then we don't." She pulled out a small energy disruptor and aimed it at the power grid. ZZZT. The lights flickered, and suddenly, The entire street went dark. The guards, caught off guard, scrambled in confusion. Jake and Zalvera slipped inside. The evidence of treason. Inside, the command center was filled with holographic maps, data terminals, and battle plans. Jake quickly scanned the screens. What he saw made his blood run cold. Troop movements, target locations. The Emperor's palace was marked for attack. "This is it," Zalvera whispered. "This is proof." Jake pulled out a data drive and copied everything. Suddenly, into his ears, the room exploded with movement as guards rushed in. Jake grabbed a chair and threw it at the first attacker, knocking them off balance. Zalvera spun, using her energy whip to take down two more. More guards stormed in. "No time to fight," Jake yelled. "We run." They sprinted toward the exit, dodging laser blasts. Just as they reached the door, a blast shook the building. Outside, explosions erupted in the city. Sirens wailed. Jake's eyes widened. Krevon had already begun his attack. The coup begins. Smoke filled the sky as Krevon's forces stormed the capital. The Emperor's royal guard fought back, but they were outnumbered. Jake and Zalvera ran through the burning streets, dodging falling debris. They had to reach the Emperor before it was too late. But then, a dark shadow loomed over them. High Lord Craven stepped forward, his crimson cloak flowing in the wind. His silver eyes burned with triumph. "You should have taken my offer, human," he sneered. Jake clenched his fists. "Yeah," he said. "Well, I don't like poison." Krevon smirked. "Then let's settle this the old way." He drew his energy sword. Jake took a deep breath. No more running. It was time to fight. The streets of the imperial capital were in chaos. Explosions echoed in the distance, and smoke filled the air. High Lord Krevon's forces were everywhere, tearing through the city. Jake Carter could feel the ground shake with the power of the assault. But he couldn't let fear stop him. Not now. Krevon stood in front of him, his crimson cloak billowing around him as he drew his energy sword. The blade hummed, its dark energy crackling with power. "You should have joined me, human," Krevon sneered, his silver eyes glowing coldly. "Now you will die along with the weak Emperor." Jake didn't flinch. He wasn't going to give up that easily. Zalvera stood by his side, her eyes blazing with determination. "You won't get away with this, Krevon," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. Krevon smirked. "The Empire is mine now, Princess. You've lost." Jake took a deep breath and looked around. The city was falling apart. The sound of clashing forces filled the air. But Jake knew one thing. They couldn't let Krevon win. Not now. "We're not done yet," Jake muttered, his fingers tightening around his weapon. He had come too far to back down now. The fight begins. Krevon lunged forward, his energy sword aimed straight for Jake. But Jake was fast. He ducked and rolled, narrowly avoiding the slash. His combat training kicked in, and he sprang to his feet, dodging another strike. Zalvera moved in beside him, her energy whip flashing through the air, catching one of Krevon's guards by surprise. The guard stumbled back, but Krevon was still a step ahead. He raised his sword and sent a wave of dark energy crashing toward them. "Move," Jake shouted. They both ducked as the blast hit the ground, sending debris flying in every direction. The shockwave knocked them off balance, but they quickly recovered. "We need to get to the palace," Zalvera said, her eyes fierce. Jake nodded. The Emperor was their only hope. If they didn't stop Krevon, the entire empire would fall. Krevon, sensing their intention, smiled. "You think you can run? This is my city now." Jake shot a glance at Zalvera. "We'll see about that." The chase through the city. The two of them sprinted down the burning streets, weaving through fallen buildings and debris. Krevon's forces were everywhere, but Jake and Zalvera moved with precision. They dodged attacks, leaped over obstacles, and fought their way through the chaos. Jake's heart raced. He had faced dangers before, but this felt different. This was a war. They weren't just fighting for their lives. They were fighting for the future of an entire galaxy. The closer they got to the palace, the more intense the battle became. The city was on fire, and the sound of blaster fire filled the air. But Jake didn't stop. He couldn't. They reached the palace gates, only to find more of Kragon's soldiers blocking their path. "Not so fast," one of the soldiers sneered, aiming a blaster at them. Jake grinned. "You know, you're in my way." With a swift movement, he threw a smoke grenade at their feet, creating a cloud of thick, black smoke. The soldiers coughed, momentarily blinded. Jake and Salvera didn't waste a second. They rushed through the smoke, taking down the soldiers as they went. The Emperor's last stand. At last, they reached the Emperor's throne room. Inside, the Emperor stood tall, his royal guards fighting off Kraven's forces. He looked tired, but his eyes burned with determination. "Father, Axalv," Vera cried, rushing to his side. "Kazalvera, you're safe," the Emperor said, relief flooding his face. "We're not out of danger yet," Jake said. "Kraven is coming." The Emperor nodded. "I've been waiting for this day. He won't take my throne so easily." Jake turned to see Kraven standing in the doorway, his energy sword still crackling with power. "You think you can stop me?" Kraven asked, his voice cold. "This is my empire now." "No," Jake said, stepping forward. "It's not." Zalvera raised her weapon, ready to fight. "You'll never get away with this, Kraven." Kraven laughed. "You're all fools. The empire is mine, and there's nothing you can do to stop me." But Jake's gaze was steady. "We'll see about that." The final battle. Kraven charged, his sword flashing as he moved. Jake barely had time to react, but his instincts kicked in, and he ducked, narrowly avoiding the blow. Exalvera leaped into action, striking with her energy whip, but Kraven blocked it with his sword. The fight was brutal. Kraven was fast, powerful, and experienced. But Jake and Salvera were determined. They worked together, fighting as one. The room shook as the battle raged on, each strike sending shockwaves through the air. Kraven was a skilled fighter, but Jake's training was paying off. He dodged Kraven's attacks and landed a few solid hits of his own. Zalvera was relentless, keeping Kraven on the defensive with her energy whip, but Kraven was not one to back down. He summoned more dark energy, creating a barrier that pushed Jake and Zalvera back. But they wouldn't give up. They couldn't. In a final, desperate move, Jake and Zalvera combined their attacks. Zalvera's whip struck Kraven's sword, knocking it from his hand, while Jake launched a powerful energy blast that hit Kraven square in the chest. Kraven fell to the ground, his silver eyes filled with shock. "It's over, Kraven," Jake said, his voice firm. Kraven's last breath was a curse. "This isn't the end." With that, the traitor was finally defeated. Victory and a new beginning. The battle was over. Kraven's forces were defeated, and the Emperor's palace was secure. The people of the Empire began to rebuild, and hope returned to the streets. Zalvera stood beside her father, her eyes filled with relief. "It's finally over." Jake nodded. "Yeah, it is." The Emperor looked at Jake. "You've done more for us than you'll ever know. You saved the Empire." Jake smiled. "Just doing my part." But Salvera looked at him with a smile. "You've done more than that. You've become a hero." Jake's heart swelled. He hadn't done it for fame or glory. He had done it for the people. He had done it for Salvera, and he had done it for the future of the Empire. Together, they had saved the galaxy, and the future was now theirs to shape.